Okay, now let's do the expansion valve, which is attached to the evaporator. That's going to happen on the inside. So here we are inside the Honda Civic. First thing that we do is remove the glove box. That's pretty simple. Just push in on the sides like this. Underneath the glove box are two Phillips screws, one on either side. Those have to come out. Forget about getting those screws out. With the Phillips head, it's also an 8mm socket, so let's get them out that way. There's a panel right here that comes straight out. You just grab it and pull it this way. Oops, you can see I've dislodged it. That just comes out here. Press in on the ends of the cabin filter and that just pops right out. Two more 8mm bolts and this panel support comes off. I've read in lots of places that if you're going to take out the blower assembly, which you have to for this job, that you have to cut this here and here. So cut it on the dotted line. I'm just going to use a hacksaw blade or maybe my Sawzall. Now two 10mm bolts on the blower assembly here and right over here. There are a few more 10mm bolts need to come out before this blower assembly can come out. There's one back there. That's going to probably require a length extension. Way down here underneath there is this one right here. Oops, right up there. That one needs to come out. This one way back there also needs to come out. To get those top bolts out, I had to go to the store and construct a really long extension. I already had the universal joint up there. You need a deep 10mm socket or you're never going to get the socket over the top of the bolt. I'm not sure why that was done. They put it way up in there and they require a deep socket on it. One more thing that you want to be aware of is right over here where you see I've stuffed a newspaper. There's a hole which when you loosen that bolt up in there and it drops off, if you don't have a magnetic head on in your socket or something, then it's going to fall into and behind the plastic that you don't want to disassemble. So as you can see, I stuffed a newspaper right there to catch the bolt when it came down, so that's going to save me some trouble. And it looks like that's all I need to do to get this thing loose. There's a couple of plugs on it. You just got to unplug those, and then I'm going to lift this thing out now. This air outlet is blocking my way so that I can't get the fan out. So I'm trying to get this loose. I took out a Phillips screw that was right there, and I'm going to just unclip some of these cables. It looks like it's almost free. There's something on the back side that's holding it. Let's go from there. On the back side of that little vent was another screw that was pretty tricky to get to, but you can do it with just a real short-handled Phillips screwdriver. So I backed that out, and it's just about, oops, I can't see. It's just about free now, this piece. Once I get this out, I should be able to get this out. And it looks like all I have left is this clip right here that I'm just going to squeeze that with a pair of pliers and back that wire out so that I can get this thing free. Alright, the fan assembly is out, and now we got to get through this. That's the air intake, I think, for the evaporator. And there's a lot of screws around the edges, a bunch of Phillips screws, and a couple more things to unplug. So I'm just going to go around, take out all the screws, and take out this piece, and then we should be able to see the evaporator. This is why the evaporator cover wasn't coming off. it's because there's another screw in there, and a standard size screwdriver like that one right there doesn't fit. I hope you can see that. But that's my long one and it fits, so one more screw. And as I wiggle this thing, it looks like it's hanging up on the lines that are coming in from the engine compartment. I'm guessing it's those refrigerant lines, so I'm going to go on the other side now and loosen those up and disconnect. Now in the back you can see way back there looks like another 10mm bolt, so I've got to disconnect that so that I can pull those refrigerant lines out. And in order to do that, I'm also going to have to come over here and remove these hoses from the brackets and possibly loosen up the bolts on these brackets too, just so that these hoses will move around enough for me to be able to at least just pull them out down there. Well, there's my extension. That is crazy, but it's getting it done. I need more play to get that bracket way back there near the evaporator out. So I'm going to disconnect the hoses right here. There's a high side and a low side line. I'm going to remove the connections. I've already done it for the high side. I don't have a wrench big enough for this, so I'm going to use my giant arc joint pliers, and that should do the trick. That's what it looks like disconnected. So I've got a couple of grommets here, not grommets, but little gaskets that I need to replace with the green ones, the new ones, before putting them back in. But this piece back here should just come out now, now that I've got it disconnected. That's what the piece looks like once you get it out of the firewall. Gaskets there on that side, nothing on this side, but that's where those come in. That's where it connects up. So you do have to, it's in there pretty good, so you have to kind of just gently rock it back and forth while you're tugging on it. Constant pressure, and then eventually it just pops loose. Alright, just because I removed that one bolt on the other side on the firewall doesn't mean I'm done, because this expansion valve cover is still not coming off, and that's because I got ahead of myself. This nightmare extension is what I still have to use to get back in there, and there's a, I took the nut off of that post there to get the hoses removed, but you can see that there's a bolt type thing at the bottom of that nut that has to come out. In order for me to get that cover off on the inside, you can see it, it's black. That post has to come out too, so I have to use this extension on this side to pull it out. That's key to this whole procedure. There it is. I got it out. Really wasn't too bad. Just busted it loose. It wasn't very tight at all, and I was able to reach back there and just unscrew it with my fingers. But yeah, now I can take that cover off. Now let's see how lucky I get with this expansion valve cover. Oh gee, it just comes right off. How about that? That was frustrating. Well, now the rest of this can just slide right out, I believe. And it does. And it has to come out so that you can be super careful of these little aluminum heat exchanger elements. They are super fragile, so you don't want to scrape them on anything, don't rub them with anything. Keep screwdrivers and fingers away from it, because they will collapse if they get under pressure. I'm just going to pull this out and work on the expansion valve out here in the garage. So it looks like this is some odd size. It's 3.5 millimeters or something like that. I fortunately found one in my collection that was sufficient.
didn't have a size on it, but I'm guessing that's about what it is. I'm going to be very gentle as I mess with this expansion valve. I've got the new one sitting right there. This one looks pretty good, but you know, they say that when you replace a compressor that the expansion valve and the condenser should go with it. Condenser is a high pressure entity. This evaporator, I'm not hearing people say replace that. The airflow must be a little bit better through the low pressure stuff, so that it's not much of a concern with clogging up and things. If anybody knows differently, certainly give me a yell. But I'm going to go ahead and take this. I'm going to be very careful. I want this insulation around the expansion valve. I want to save that and reuse it, so I'm going to be careful with it. I'm just going to reassemble everything and re-grommet everything, and I think it's time to reassemble. But not before separating this. This looks, it's got some kind of gooey coating adhesive type thing on it, but same thing applies. Just gingerly, very carefully work on this until it separates. Okay, I just got it loose, so I'm gonna just rebuild it the same way I took it apart, but that was the last disassembly step, so I think we're just gonna put it all back together and recharge the system. It's probably helpful to know that this 1/4-inch socket with just a, I don't know, what is that, 8-inch extension with a deep socket on it, 10 millimeters. You don't really have to snake in there with a universal joint and everything. I was able to actually get this wrench in there and get it on that bolt back there. Oops. You can see, hopefully the glare's not too much. But yeah, you can get it right. There we go. You can get it right on there, and you have room to crank back there, so it's a little bit easier than trying to, you know, get those bendy joints on there, which are really hard to control when they're under a lot of torque.